tension in the imagery. It actually feels more, it's like very soft and doesn't feel devastation.
Right.
There's
Even
a
if
kind of
it's internal
simplistic.
devastation,
Yeah.
the portrait doesn't make me feel that. I agree with you.
We can go to the full.
What did you say?
So we could go to the full view again.
The full view of this one, yeah.
No,
No,
of all of the.
sorry.
To me, the strongest contender here is New York Times Old World Young Africa, because talking about dynamic photography and the typography plus the headline and then the picture, all those elements really go together very succinctly for me. You know, it just really shows everything about what this entire story is all about.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen this picture, I've seen this picture over and over again. I can't help but go back to it because there's so much going on in this photograph that tells the entirety of the entire project.
Yeah. You feel joy, like it feels.
And it's about the world will be Africa by
Right.
2050.
I think it's, in a lot of ways, it's kind of the opposite of what the Afghanistan image is doing.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's so hard to encapsulate. I mean, this is another 40-page section to encapsulate the story in a single image, you know. And a lot of times, you know, you want to rely on the headline and say, oh, the photo shouldn't have to do all the heavy lifting. This one can do all of that lifting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that image in itself really speaks to so much.
Just a note on the Afghanistan layout and photo and the photo that's being pictured here. I do love the photography. I do love the light, and maybe I'm okay with this because it wasn't too literal. We weren't showing the literal destruction of a country that has gone through decades and decades of conflict and war, and I feel that it has that poignancy, and they were probably telling, you know, we don't have to be too literal about it, and their focus is on, or was on, women and how they've been impacted by this war. I think it makes sense to me, and maybe, as to your point, we have seen these types of photos over and over again. I just appreciate the photography, and I'm not, you know, I think it might still be in contention. We'll see how everybody feels about the rest.
I guess what bothered me just about the portrait is women being defined as mother, having a child. And I wonder, to me it just says so many things about women and women in Afghanistan and stereotyping women, and I guess that's what really sort of, I just feel like it could have gone maybe a different direction, but I do, you know, I do want to reiterate, I do love the portrait. I think it's stunning. I think the lighting is beautiful, and their facial expressions are everything, but I just.
Maybe because, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Maybe because part of what they're trying to show here is that women in Afghanistan do not exist, and that this is a way of showcasing that particular theme largely. And I apologize, I did not read this particular project, but looking at it now, I think maybe that was part of what they were trying to show, that these women have voices, and they were trying to focus on how they live in a country that do not think of them as part of the community.
I mean, I kind of feel like something I'm thinking about with all of these covers is like thinking about how, as a reader, you come across them in the context of the paper, right? Like it's intended to show a separation or like a new thing versus like what you were seeing leading up to that. And I think that there's something kind of nice that maybe if that were like a very packed paper for the day and you come across this like very like dark, still, quiet thing that could have an impact, like, oh, I'm changing the pace of how of what I'm reading, what I'm seeing, like what is this, and maybe can pull you into it. That I think that there is something nice about that it is a quiet image, and it is like a lot more ambiguous. It makes you have some questions about like what is this really about, or like what are we kind of here for. There also is a part of me, it's like I don't necessarily want like the picture of the Afghan woman like in the literal devastation, like which is kind of I think how we have seen, you know, a lot of imagery out of Afghanistan over 20 years, but could this have been a moment instead to use like a different kind of dynamic image, like an image with more of an interplay or a moment rather than such a like, you know, more of like a posed moment, like might have helped a bit. But again, I also didn't see the entire layout of it, so unclear. Maybe this fits better with the tone of it, and so maybe the tone is, maybe it's a portrait series, maybe there's something in that where it makes more visual sense. But yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about it, only in context of some of the other work here, I think. Like, I like this on its own, but like, I agree with like the Young Africa piece, which does that thing. It also stops you. It also kind of indicates a different kind of feeling from what you would have seen leading up to that point in the paper. And the fact of leaning on like a picture that is joyful and fun and dynamic, where like it could have gone a lot of different directions. I'm sure if you're doing a story that's a big project that hits the different course of emotion.
But it also shows Africa in a light that we don't see Africa.
Right.
And this is where between the two, that's why I'm like,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying about going through the paper and you land on this section. I just wonder for, you know, the power news readers, if they would say, oh, I've seen that before. Is that enough to grab them? I don't know.
Well,
But that, for me, between the two, that's in Africa that people don't see enough.
Yeah. It sounds like this might still be in contention for us, but do you mind if we go back to thumbnails of all of them, and maybe just for sake of narrowing down the conversation, were there other outs you guys had in mind? Or definite ins?
The fashion one, for me, I think the image is really dynamic, the color, all of that. There's just, for me, they're so tense on either side of the frame that I feel like it's almost too tight. Like,
Too what?
Too tight.
Too tight?
Yes, like they're just that I'm looking to the right side of the frame, and you know, as I'm trying to kind of explore this image and how it plays on I want it to breathe just a little bit more, and I don't know if that's full frame, right, or if there is a little bit more, but I think that just a little easing back of that, you might
Just
allow a
some
little
space.
more flow in the photo.
I like this photograph. It goes, you know, they definitely thought about how to do their headlines with this, because it really matches what you're seeing here. I also agree with you that maybe you need a little bit of air on the sides a bit, but this layout, the design, works for me.
Is it in one of your top
Yeah.
4?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that was one of my top 4. It also made me think about use of vertical and thinking about, you know,
Good point.
the audience who are probably really experiencing this in the digital format and translating between print and digital, or print and Instagram, or print and, you know, the app. But I hear you when you say it feels just a little tight. I don't know if that is full frame. I don't know if, you know, this photographer chose to photograph things on their iPhone, which is also possible, which we were all experimenting, and again, trying to think about cross platforms, or surfaces. So, but this was one of my top. I love the lighting and the feeling and the flow of the material. I thought he did a good job. And the cleanliness. It's such a clean front page.
Mhm.
I was
Yeah.
actually trying to encourage you guys to cull, but where they're.
I know.
I mean, no, this is all
that-
really
I
good
tried.
discussion.
I'm kind of ambivalent about it personally.
You're what?
I like,
Ambivalent.
yeah, like I like the photo and the layout from a design perspective, but, and maybe this is part of just like my bias as like, this is like not necessarily the genre of what I tend to consume, and so I'm like, yeah, this is like really cool looking, but I'm like, I don't feel compelled to do anything more with that. But like, do I want to see more interesting things? I think there's something about the palette that almost feels a little too neutral. Like I kind of feel like my eye goes straight to the hole in the middle of the outfit rather than bouncing around everywhere else. So like it's not my favorite. Like it's one I would feel comfortable losing. But then that splits the vote because of course it does.
Yeah.
So
That's
You know
okay
what makes
too.
me chuckle about that is it's in Paris, and the color scheme on the page is the colors of the flag is what I was sort of thinking about.
I
Mm.
hadn't even thought about that.
But I think it's a really great use of protocol for me.
Well, let's keep it in discussion then, if you guys are split on it. If we go back to the thumbnails, were there any others you guys wanted to pull out?
I just wanted to note for the record, the Uvalde layout. I think the most noteworthy here about this project is the time and support and commitment the New York Times has on this story. And I just, this may not be particularly the best set of images for this on the particular story, but to go back again and again to this community and not really surrendering the story because it's an important historic changing story. I just feel that that commitment needs to be celebrated because it's not often that people can do stories like this. I love that they had spent time to go do the story over and over again. I don't mind this layout at all. It's a hard story to do considering the devastation has already happened, but being able to capture scenes of how life goes on in this community, I think overall this project needs to be commended.
Yeah, this is definitely in